So whatever is happening, whatever affects you and the other person affects us as well. I mean, I am very certain there are very few people in the industry, whether it's in the music industry or the performing arts, broadly. I am almost certain there are very few people who are not affected by it, whether it's somebody you know personally or somebody who's associated with somebody that you know that kind of thing, and it's a spiral, yeah.
That is Sibongile Khumalo, South African singer and songwriter, and many of you may remember that it was on this day in 2021 that she passed away. What a talent this country has lost, but absolutely the music remains with us for the years to come. It's 10 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to The Talking Point. I'm Cathy Mohlahlana. Pleasure to be with you this morning as we kickstart a brand new day, a brand new show at least. And of course, I'll be with you until midday as we lead conversations that move us. I hope you're ready for the conversation, ready for the company as always. We will start off with the open line, and I'll be taking your calls. The studio line to dial 086 000 2032. That's 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. So quite a lot for us to reflect on then for the open line, and I'm happy for you to raise any matters of national, international interest that you want to put on the agenda. Absolutely, one of the stories that we keep a close eye on is the situation unfolding in the DRC, right? The latest there being that the M23 rebels have now come into the city in as far as the eastern part of the DRC, Goma is concerned, and they've taken control of that particular city. Sitting on the border with Rwanda and the shores of Lake Kivu, Goma is, of course, vital for trading. It is also a transport hub that's home to more than 1 million people within reach of mining towns that supply metals, minerals, and all sorts of other commodities. The rebels have said that they are now the ones in charge of the city. The Congolese government, however, says its troops still hold some key locations there. I want to bring you just some of these clips that give a situation of what is unfolding on the ground, at least from the mouths of locals.
On the move again. People who've been displaced time after time by fighting fled as M23 approached Goma.
I am tired of fleeing. The number of times I've fled is enough, and I have nowhere else to go. We abandoned our villages to come to Goma, and even here, people started to flee. Where are we going to take refuge now?
Scenes of chaos, a mass jailbreak as prisoners capitalized on confusion. The situation on the ground is unclear, with competing claims of who's in control. M23 was welcomed in some parts of Goma, but feelings are mixed. Elsewhere, there is fear. Near the airport, sounds of gunfire and clashes. This is only the latest chapter in 3 years of fighting in eastern Congo. The M23 insists it's protecting a persecuted Tutsi minority. But despite UN support for the Congolese army, it took rebels just days to advance to Goma, killing 13 peacekeepers along the way. Among those now fleeing into neighboring Rwanda, Congolese soldiers, despite army claims to still control parts of Goma. Rwanda supports the M23 cause, but for these soldiers, it's become a refuge. They handed over their weapons and waited to hear their fate. We're tired, he says. We didn't get any help. That's why we've run into Rwanda. We've been very well received here.
All right, and so that just gives some perspective of what is happening on the ground in the DRC, and absolutely a situation that, of course, requires all sorts of intervention, whether we're talking diplomatic, whether we're talking just the bringing together of stakeholders to try and bring some kind of stability to that particular region. Of course, this morning in South Africa, there are many NGOs that are approaching the week, and I would say the month end, right? It's month end, just at the end of the week, with a lot of uncertainty around what the future holds. And it's as a result of that announcement that was made by the President Donald Trump, or at least the signing, the issuing of the executive order that has triggered a 90-day review of U.S. foreign aid programs, and those programs then coming to a complete halt pending the review. South African NGOs, of course, caught up in the midst of that. We are a significant recipient of funding from PEPFAR, which is the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. Now, it's a fund that has been largely dedicated to fighting HIV/AIDS. South Africa, because we sit with the highest burden of HIV/AIDS in the country, has been a significant recipient of that funding over the years, right through from about 2004. Now, one of the challenges that we are currently facing is that we now stand to lose potentially funding that has gone into NGOs who hire people who work in different aspects around HIV/AIDS treatment and management. It ranges right through from the research to workers, volunteers, or people that are doing work in communities. And so the implications of that for our country are absolutely significant. And I just wonder then what this means for the future of the country, and how we then need to be rethinking about our system. Yes, the South African government funds a significant portion of our response to HIV/AIDS. It has certainly increased that over the years, but there are still significant amounts that are coming from this global funding. Just to give you a picture, I mean, I really like the figures that the Business Day used this morning, right? And they give a breakdown of the different organizations. And just to give you an example, so they've listed organizations such as the Health Systems Trust, the Aurum Institute, the Wits Reproductive Health and HIV Research Institute. And if you have a breakdown of that, the Health System Trust employs 1,700 people on its PEPFAR-funded programs. That's just one company. The Aurum Institute has more than 500 staff that are funded by the funding from the U.S. government. And they this morning, of course, are sitting there not knowing what the future is going to hold. If you look at cumulatively how much money has come into South Africa from that funding, it's 140 billion rand since 2004. So it is a moment that we need to really take stock of and ask ourselves what happens next. But also, what should we be doing in a moment like this? How should South Africa be responding within this period of the review, knowing the implications of the withdrawal of this funding? I see some people are saying, well, it's been great for us to talk a lot and, to say that we don't need the US, but now it's a moment for us to actually deal with the consequences of being seen as maybe provocative towards the US. I don't know. I wonder what you make of it. I'd love to hear from you. Of course, it is a Tuesday, and we'll be talking finance in the second hour of the show. Brian Hirsch will be with us. And of course, then that will be followed by our final conversation in the 11 o'clock hour. We're going to be focusing on the state of public transport in the Northwest Province. You'd remember that just as we started off the year, one of our listeners in Dinokana complained about the public services in his area having collapsed. The HOD called in to respond to what he had said. So we'll bring an update on what the state of affairs there is. It is the open line 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. What must South Africa do now? Where to from here for us as a country? And maybe a reminder of part of what the U.S. President Donald Trump said on the campaign trail. So he's simply making good on the promises he committed to.
In countries that we give tremendous amounts, hundreds of millions of dollars a year to an aid, right? Not anymore. They don't do anything for us. They talk, they don't do for us. And that's about it for them, because I tell you what, I've had it. They call up, oh, we're working so hard. In the meantime, Honduras and El Salvador and all these places, it's horrible what they're doing to us. It's horrible. And Mexico's trying, but I think maybe they could try a little bit harder.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. It's your national roundtable. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. 086 000 2032 on the WhatsApp voice note line. 0614 104 107. I want to start off, I think is it in Randburg this morning? Not ready yet? Okay, let's go to Donnybrook. Spoo, good morning.
Miss Cathy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Spoo, where is Donnybrook?
It's in KZN near Bulwa, next to the Drakensberg Mountains.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Yes, heartbroken, cannot explain how I feel right now, Cathy. Cathy, I called last night on Oliver's show, asking for our president to send our Grippins and Roy Falk to DRC. Little did I know that my son has been fighting for 9 hours defending our base with all his brothers and sisters. Our defense minister was just there. She was briefed of the situation. She did nothing. She lied on Face the Nation and saying our army is well equipped, when it's not. They fought for 9 hours, calling for backup, calling for reinforcement. They ran out of ammo, and the rebels ran them over. I'm devastated, Cathy.
Sbu, when was the last time you spoke to your son?
Last night.
And this is the report that he gave you about what's been happening in the last 24 hours.
Yes, Cathy, they fought for 9 hours and they ran out of ammo. Our Goma base has been ran over. Is our president that weak that he can't call an airstrike? In the exercise in Luatla, Cathy, we saw the Gripens flying. We saw the Royfalk flying. Is he that weak? He wants to risk everything just to sulk up to Paul Kagame. It's ridiculous, Cathy.
Sbu, if what your son is saying as one of the defenders deployed in Goma, that our base has been run over, what then are they doing? Where are they running to for cover?
Well, Cathy, some of them in the Goma base has been captured, and he's telling me that some of the guys that were attacking them were FARDC, and they were trained by South Africa, and because DRC is paying them peanuts, then they joined the rebels because the rebels pays more. That's why some of them hasn't been killed yet, because they trained them.
All right. Okay. This is. I'm trying to process what you're saying, Sbu, at the same time, and of course emphasizing that this is the version that your son has given you. How long has he been deployed in the DRC?
Well, they went with the semi-DRC unit, the SADC unit.
Yes. So did he start there last year or the year before?
Yes, last year. And Cathy, what pains me the most is that Njimatsecha was briefed of the situation there. They did nothing to give them more ammo. They were willing to stand ground. He said to me 3 days ago he's not going to leave his brothers and sisters to die there. He's willing to fight with them to death. That's how the morale is there. But our political leadership is failing them. How difficult was it just to send the Gripens there to save our boys?
Sbu, do you think we would be able to get a hold of your son? Do you think we would be able to put him on air?
I've tried him this morning. I can't get hold of him.
How are you feeling?
That's why I say heartbroken, cannot explain how I feel.
Mm.
I was even wanting to say, to go as far as, if our commander-in-chief does nothing about this situation, if they does nothing, we don't retaliate and show support to our boys, ANC can kiss my vote goodbye, for all I care.
Looking at the state of affairs now, and clearly no indication that there's going to be anything significantly different, Sbu, what position does that leave you as a father whose son is fighting in that conflict?
Well, sis, I'm very proud of what my son and his brothers have done, putting their lives at risk for others. I'm very proud of him. My grandfather fought in the Second World War. It's in it's in our bloodline. I'm very proud of what he does. I'm very proud of 44 Battalion, that they breed the best of the best. But our leadership, I don't know how we came about to appoint Engin Tsecha as a defense minister. I don't know how that came up. She knows nothing about defense. I don't know what she was doing in DRC for the first place. if she didn't look after the best interest of her soldiers.
Do we know, has he said anything to you about them being withdrawn from the DRC at this point, Sbu? Would you want them to be withdrawn? Do you want your son to come home?
What I do know, Sis Cathy, is that we're busy scrambling another battalion to go to DRC. They are not cowards, Cathy, I can tell you that. They are not cowards. They're not trying to run away. All they want is support. And we can't just roll over when everyone knows that Rwanda is doing what Israel is doing to Gaza in DRC. And then our commander-in-chief says nothing. And all what we can hear is that he called Paul Kagame. Calling for what? Negotiating with terrorists.
Sbu, what a call. We're going to have to leave it there this morning. I'm going to put you through to Lebo, though. We want to keep in touch. Also see if we can get in touch with your son, who's out, at least as Sbu says, among those that are fighting in the DRC. And we'll have to get in touch, right, with the SANDF. Did you hear what Sbu said? According to his son, some SANDF soldiers have been captured. Some of them have also gone over to the other side to fight with the rebels. That's the account that Sbu says he has from the ground. Obviously not verified at this point, and that also our base in Goma has been run over, that it's been destroyed. Yeah, very, very concerning if that is in fact the state of affairs. All right, we're going to continue the conversation on the talking point. It is the open line. What a way, right, to get into it. I'll take your calls on 086 000 2032, on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107.
Good morning. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed the Preservation and Development of Agricultural Land Bill into law. It ensures that agricultural land support long-term food production and contributes to economic growth. Patco Bus Company says the number of its buses that have been torched in Mpumalanga has risen to 50. This happened across the province overnight. And Kenya's President William Ruto has invited both his Rwandan and Democratic Republic of Congo counterparts to a meeting in Kenya. The current conflict in the DRC will top the agenda. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Toffees are well aware that only maximum points will help them out of the bottom half.
Lewin, great feat, brilliance, absolutely superbly done. Calvert-Lewin for Everton.
Meanwhile, the Foxes believe they are in dire need of victory to run away from trouble.
It's Jordan Ayew, back to goal. Jordan Ayew has scored for Leicester City, and those Leicester fans are celebrating wildly.
This is the Premier League. Experience the superb contest, Everton FC versus Leicester City FC, on Saturday 1 February at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SABC CSI, in partnership with SAFM, will be giving away 20 laptops to Tetlanyo Secondary School in Kimberley on the 31st of January 2025. Titlanyo Secondary School has been nominated by the SABC to receive 20 laptops after writing a donation request to enhance their ambitions to be 4IR compliant and increase the number of learners ready to participate fully and productively in the country's economy. Tune in to SAFM on the 31st of January and listen to The Talking Point, broadcasting live from the Titlanyo Secondary School. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Katie, and your producer, and all the listeners of SAFM. Katie, I was watching something like video on YouTube yesterday. I was very angry when I was listening. That guy, I don't know, he's a Waluso, but the guy that was killing Mr. Krizani, that guy, the way he was talking there, like it's very painful. Like really, it's very painful. That guy is racist, like real. But now the thing that is confusing me, why he didn't talk while he was still here in South Africa. He was waiting to go where he's belonged. Then he's starting to talk. That guy, like seriously, is take South Africa for granted. Sia from Cape Town. Thank you, Katie.
Good morning, Cathy and SAFM listeners. Cathy, let me take this moment and encourage all African leaders, those who are in a certain position of political parties, and all those who are on grassroots level, everyone who's Pan-Africanist. I greet you this morning and encourage you to follow through from what Ibrahim Traore and others are doing on this on their countries to liberate the black people who are in marginalized line. And also let me encourage everyone, brothers and sisters, to make sure that we equip ourselves by knowledge and know what is going on around us. This is Lozuko from Cape Town.
Good day, Cathy. Better here in Kala. Yes, Cathy, it's our provocative approach to the US. The way this current president has approached, I mean, the way he do things and he speaks about the US, that's what led us to where we are. And many South Africans were hit about his approach. President Cyril Ramaphosa is the worst president of the ANC. We have created enemies with South Africa. So we have to deal with the consequences of what we have did, starting from that Russian ship that was seen in Cape Town, and all these things, the way he talks about that country and the way he behaves, that's what led us to this. And President Trump is targeting South Africa specifically. Yes, we have to live with it. Thanks, Katie. Better here.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
You're listening to The Talking Point. It's still the open line. 086 000 2032 is where I'm taking your calls. Thanks for those WhatsApp voice notes that you've sent through on 0614 104 107. Look, I don't know if it's necessarily a targeting of South Africa, intentionally or only. I think there's a list of countries that Donald Trump may be after. Coralie in Randburg, good morning.
Good morning. I'm a first-time caller on your program, but I really want to talk about HIV/AIDS. And I know that we're getting $8.4 billion a year in donations, but it's costing our health people $20 billion putting it in. But what I feel we need to do, we need to stop having new AIDS notifications, because that way we would get rid of AIDS and then we wouldn't need the money. Now, last year there were 150,000 new notifications. The vast majority young girls from 15 to 30 plus, and the rest men, mainly 45 to 55, 60. However, if this is just my idea, and I know it's not constitutional, they give girls in grade 4 HPV vaccine. If they gave them the 3-year contraceptive implant, we would stop the teenage pregnancies. But if they combined with it, and it's being registered by SAPRA, a twice-yearly subcutaneous PrEP injection, which will prevent them getting HIV/AIDS. We already have one tablet a day, but you will not get teenagers or young girls to remember to take that. If we did that, in 40 years, we could virtually have no HIV/AIDS, and it would free up so much more budget for the rest of our healthcare. So that's my suggestion.
Corali, giving PrEP to minors, do we know what the implications of that health-wise are?
That's a very good question. Thank you, Cathy. One would need to check on the packaging, the professional information, the PI, when it's registered. But the other thing, because if they were under 12, which they would be in grade 4, they would need the consent of their
parents. Of course.
But obviously, once they're 12, they could consent themselves, couldn't they?
All right, Corali, that is, I think what you're pointing us to, not necessarily weighing in on the suggestions that you've made, but what you're saying is that it forces us as a country to go back to say, what more should we be doing to try and actually stem the growth or the what's the right word I'm looking for? It starts with the prevalence, the high prevalence of HIV/AIDS.
Well, it's the new notifications that are worrying me. I'm hoping that it's very difficult to make, that maybe we get an HIV vaccine, and that would be a huge help, wouldn't it?
All right, Corali. Thanks for that input out in Randburg. I guess the other thing is that maybe we become so reliant and dependent on the funding that we know, right, that people can live even after they've contracted HIV/AIDS now. They live very, very long lives, that we forget just how much it costs us on a year-to-year basis to run these interventions, to run these programs. So the message around preventing the spread of HIV has shifted to what it was, I would say, about 10, 15 years ago, when the message about prevention was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere in this country without seeing messaging around preventing HIV/AIDS, and that has somewhat died down, and maybe we have become a little bit relaxed as a society in that regard. Bonakele, you are in Khayelitsha. Good morning.
A very good morning. Long time no speaking to you.
Yes, Bonakele, go for it.
Look, first thing, God will punish me if I'm not going to say this, and say thank you very much to Lebo, your producer. That guy is a very good guy. He's doing a wonderful job behind that desk, because he always takes my calls and puts me through to Cathy so that I can speak on SAFM, unlike the other guy or the other lady, so to speak.
You see, Bonakele, I knew that this was for your own selfish interest. Now that you are on air, use your time wisely. What do you want to talk about?
Absolutely, that's what I'm doing, exactly. I'm someone who always tells the truth, Something that I want to talk about, it's going to be 2 or 3, very quick. About this interviewing of this Janus Wallus, this Poland guy. What do they want to achieve from this guy? He was here, he didn't say anything. Now that he's in Poland, in his own he's in his country, he start talking. Are the people going to believe on him in whatever that he's going to say? To me, that's my opinion or my view. Whatever that is going to say, whatever interviews he's getting, they entertain him. That's absolutely nonsense. That's my point. And the second one...
Yeah, look, I mean, Bonakele, were you expecting him to be repentant? What exactly were we expecting from Janus Wallus?
Look, while he was here in jail in South Africa, he should have said, he had people were talking and wanted to know as who told them, who instructed them, both with the late Dr. Lewis to kill Utatu Krisan. He never said anything. He was in jail, and he knows fully aware. People wanted to know exactly who the main people who actually said to him, listen, go and kill him. It was not a decision of the late Debbie Lewis and him only. There were people behind this. So now we start talking and so, because I heard at some stage they was telling that former President Jacob Zuma once visited Debbie Lewis. What are we going to do about that? He is in Poland now. He's been released on parole. So he's going to talk all this nonsense and saying whatever that is saying about black people. You understand what I'm saying? So are we really going to listen to this guy? Are we interested to listen from him? Whatever that is saying, I'm saying it's absolutely nonsense. For me personally, I'm saying I'm not going to. You're not going to get anything from that guy.
Okay.
So the next one, I'm going to be quick, like I said. With regard to the sexual harassment case of Dr. Sope of MKP, have you heard that? Did you know about that?
Yes.
One case in the police station, and the charge is laid against him. So I'm interested to know what is gonna happen now within that MK party with someone in that high position of him.
Okay.
With the sexual harassment that is coming out. So
all right, Bonakele. Okay, well, let's leave it there. Bonakele out in Khayelitsha. You've asked the question. Yeah, I guess, we'll have to wait and see exactly where that matter goes in as far as the sexual harassment case is concerned. But yeah, the MK party also released a statement on the fact that the former President Jacob Zuma doesn't have to answer for why he went to go and see Clive W. Lewis in jail. So, yeah. They feel they don't need to, the former president doesn't have anything that he needs to explain on that particular issue. Stephen, you're calling from Gwandebele. Good morning.
Good morning, Casey. I'd like to correct something that you said when you summarized what that gentleman who was a son in the DRC said. I don't know if I said you correctly when you said that.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, when you said that, you said that the gentleman says that his son told him that some of our guys have switched sides. Which is not correct. What I've heard the gentleman say is that his son told him that some of the FADC, that's the abbreviation for the DRC Defense Force, those are the guys who have switched sides to the rebel side. And they started firing on our guys. Remember,
I see. Okay. Yeah.
He even said that these are the same guys who were trained by our guys, and they were fighting alongside our guys. But then in the end, they ended up switching sides because those guys appear better than the DRC. And this is not the first time. And I was expecting this, by the way. I remember I was discussing this with one of my former colleagues. By the way, I'm a former Defense Force member myself. These are the challenges that our guys are facing over there. If you will remember, in 2013, the same thing happened in the CAR. Our guys trained the CAR Defense Forces, and then they were fighting alongside them. Then when things started heating up, they switched sides and then started firing up on our guys. And that's how our guys lost the battle there. So this is like something which which happens often in that area there.
Oh, Stephen, thank you so much for that. I completely misunderstood part of what he was saying with regard to that. And I imagine then the dangers are even more stark because now these people also have some form of intel, right? They understand a bit of how you as a unit even work, no? Especially if you've spent time training them.
No, Katie, not only that you train them, remember you're fighting alongside them. So they are your comrades in arms, that is. Now, even their positioning, they position themselves nicely so that when they start firing upon you, and then, they are they are at an advantage. And at first, when they start firing upon our guys, they cause confusion because initially you will think that they are making a mistake, and then you will try to perhaps try to indicate to them that, no, guys, you are making a mistake, you're firing upon us. And then by the time you realize that, no, these guys have switched sides, I mean, you've already suffered huge damages, you see, I mean, huge losses. So, it's very dangerous to operate in those areas there. It's very, very dangerous.
Stephen, what should we be doing now? As somebody, again, who's a former soldier, who's been caught up in situations like this before?
Cathy, you see, the problem with our defense force is that our government is dilly-dallying on acquiring a heavy lift aircraft. So our guys, when they are out there, whenever they need support, it's hard to get them support, the support that they need, because our defense force does not have the heavy lift aircraft. Lindiwe Sisulu cancelled that Airbus M400 that they were trying to acquire. And now we don't have anything. I mean, really, the guys run out of ammunition. Ammunition is the most basic thing that you can, that you need, I mean, in order to sustain a battle. Now, if you run out of ammunition, what can you do? Now, they can't send in reinforcement quickly enough because we don't have that heavy lift aircraft. They cannot send in the Rafale attack helicopters and stuff like that because we don't have heavy lift aircraft. And that, I mean, even in 2013, that was a problem that those guys faced there. But now it's more than 10 years later, we still don't have that capacity. You see, so this thing lies in government. If our government can change attitude and try to capacitate the defense force more or better, and then we can better do these things. I mean, like the gentleman said, that our guys are very brave, and they don't retreat easily, you know. But if they don't have ammunition, what can they do?
So Stephen, in instances where, as Boo had said, where South African soldiers are captured, are these things that are resolved on the ground before it even officially reaches the country or reaches the members or, family members of these individuals?
Well, that's a difficult one, Cathy. Look, if our guys are captured, once they retrieve, obviously, I mean, if they, like the gentleman said, that our base got overrun. So obviously, some of the members will escape. They will then try to regroup afterwards. Then from there, the leadership, the commanders, will then contact the other side and try to negotiate with them in terms of the release of our guys. And then, I mean, if that fails, then obviously it will end up reaching the families that the guys who are captured by the rebels.
Sure, but then it is something that there are quite a number of processes that are triggered before it can be confirmed by anyone.
I'm not sure, Cathy. Look, information leaks very easily these days. Like, I mean, the gentleman who has a son there, I mean, he can be in contact with his son. His son can tell him, he tells him, I mean, that goes with everybody else who has a relative there fighting in the territory. And then those people can then leak the information even before, it gets resolved. So it's hard to control information nowadays. Really.
Yeah. All right, Stephen, thank you. Thank you so much for that call. Stephen out in Gwandebele, bringing in his own perspective there in terms of the conversation around the DRC that we're watching. And Stephen, thank you again for that clarity. I clearly misheard what Boo was saying in terms of the soldiers that had turned. It wasn't South African soldiers that had turned to join the rebels, but in fact it was some of those that are local that The South African force had then been training. We were fighting alongside some of those soldiers, at least as per the interpretation of Sbu's call. Koti, you're in Polokwane. Good morning. Ritsugile le kae, Koti?
Alright. Man, I just want to echo something here pertaining what is so-called a government. Firstly, I would like to say that, look, as the majority of South Africans, we all crying about the government does not deliver, government this, government that. So I've realized that we might be wrong because of we are demanding the services or that what the government is supposed to do. So we're backing a wrong tree because South Africa is not a government. South Africa is a company, South African cooperative. When we vote, we thought that we are voting for the president, but we are voting for the CEO of South African cooperative. So they just that they cannot say it, but they just sit there and enjoy when we are crumbling government, knowing that they are not forcefully have to provide what the government is supposed to provide, because they know that they are not the government. South Africa is not a government. Now look at it with the gentleman just spoke now because of the government cannot provide adequate equipment for the soldiers. How could that happen if this is the government? Because whatever that has to happen with soldiers, the CEO must first report to the company, Vatican City, which is England, the Crown, America, Germany, France, and Italy. So he must first go and report that can I do this for the soldiers. When they're supposed to deploy the soldiers for the purpose of security, South African security, what is it happening? Nothing is happening. But when the Zamazamas get into the minerals under the ground that is held by the Queen, they go there rushing. Our borders are not monitored, which is supposed to be the soldiers' work to monitor our borders. They are not there. Instead, we use other funds that are not there that were supposed to feed the poor to come up with another board or another company that must go and work and secure our borders.
Yeah, look, Koti, I guess it's a question of SA Inc., right? The state of SA Inc., and whether or not we are happy with the level of delivery, including the role of the executive, is really what Koti is pointing to. Sydney, you're in Acornhoek. Good morning. Hi, Sydney.
Oh, Sister Cathy.
Welcome.
So thank you so much, Sister. I'm Sydney Deliver in Acornhoek District, and we are listening to the program on the school library.
You know, we always love to hear from you, Sydney. Go for it.
So good. Yeah, so yesterday it was 8 years anniversary of the ending of the Holocaust, Auschwitz in Poland in particular. It was yesterday, 8 years. That is one of the painful execution of human beings by other human beings simply because they were Nazi Germany, indoctrinated by whom they served him like he was their god, Adolf Hitler. And they inflicted that cruelty on the Jews. That heavy cruelty, starving people to death, death chamber, all forms of cruelty you can think of to exterminate the Jews in Germany. But what is ironic, my sister, is that 8 years later, Palestinians are persecuted, yes, the same way, destroyed in buildings, in rubble. Many, I still believe in many, they haven't even been found under the rubble. They just died, they broken bones, ribs, and so on, because structured slabs fall on them. Heavy cruelty, young children in Palestine are being anesthetized Are they amputated? Limbs are amputated with no anesthesia at all, young children, and they don't know anything. Then check who is behind this heavy persecution of the Palestinians today. I'm told, when I look at the things, it tells me some of the Jews. The very people who have gone through a painful persecution 8 years ago, they inflicted on the Palestinians. How ironic it is. It's 7 things.
Okay.
It is their religion. They are Muslims. They are Christians there. Why? I don't know where I'll find the answer.
All right.
I think outreach, Holocaust, should have taught us in all forms of contradictions, not fight, do not inflict persecution on another man. As it is happening in Palestine today. I'm talking this one.
Sydney in Aikenhook, I think you can leave it there for this morning. Unfortunately, I don't have any more time for that conversation. I also just want to note that we're getting so many messages empathizing with Spoo, whose son is one of those fighting in the DRC. I just wanted to acknowledge that we are seeing so many of you that are saying that you really were moved by his call and you empathize with the position he finds himself in. We're going to take a quick break. It'll lead us into the 10 o'clock news.
Hey, want to check your TV license balance conveniently? Look no further. Our SMS service allows you to do just that. By sending a message containing your ID or TV license number to 44210, you can quickly access your balance without needing multiple inquiries or waiting on hold. Plus, standard SMS rates apply. Take advantage of this efficient method to stay informed and streamline your payment process today. T's and C's apply.
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan. 10% deposit, prime rate 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford family guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. T&Cs apply.
The SAFM playwriting competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
In our top stories, President Ramaphosa signs Preservation and Agricultural Land Bill into law, and Mpumalanga Police probe attacks on Patco bus depots. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa signed the Preservation and Development of Agricultural Land Bill into law. It ensures that agricultural land supports long-term food production and contributes to economic growth. The law creates an enabling environment for the development of the sector. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says it reinforces South Africa's efforts to ensure agricultural land is used optimally to support long-term food production.
The law supports government's objectives and priorities in respect of the sustainable management and use of natural resources. It also sets out a countrywide policy and regulatory framework for the preservation and development of agricultural land.
Meanwhile, the Indigenous First Nation Advocacy South Africa has strongly condemned the newly signed Land Expropriation Act. It has described the legislation as a devastating blow to the land restitution rights of Indigenous San and Khoi people. The advocacy group believes the act prioritizes reconciliation over justice for the already marginalized and vulnerable communities. Philip Williams is the advocacy group's executive director.
You cannot talk about expropriation without compensation, without fixing the structural issues within the constitution of this country. Section 25, subsection 7 of the constitution bars or keeps the indigenous San community outside of claiming land, because it explicitly says that you cannot claim land which you have lost before 1913. This is criminal.
Police in Mpumalanga say they are investigating cases of malicious damage to property, attempted murder and assault following attacks on some depots of Patco Bus Company. 50 buses were torched and 2 workers wounded. This happened across the province overnight. An unknown group of people ambushed security personnel at the Moloto depot. The group then set buses on fire. Other depots also reported that their buses were torched. Provincial Police spokesperson Donald Mhluli.
Investigators have already been assembled by the Acting Provincial Commissioner of the SAPS in Mpumalanga, Major General Dr. Zef Mkhwanazi, who strongly condemned this incident. And the team is working around the clock to ensure that the perpetrators of this heinous crime swiftly brought to book. We urge any person who's got information that may assist the team to apprehend the suspects to use our Crime Stop number 08600 10111 or send information via my subs app. The investigation continues.
Kenya's President William Ruto has invited both his Rwandan and Democratic Republic of Congo counterparts to a meeting in Kenya. The current conflict in the DRC will top the agenda. Rwanda, the DRC as well as Kenya are members of the East African Community. Our international editor, Sophie Mukwena, has the story.
The Kenyan President William Ruto, in his capacity as the chairperson of the East Africa Community, spoke to the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and the new Secretary of State of the United States of America about the situation in the eastern part of the DRC. President Ruto has invited leaders of Rwanda and the DRC for talks with the aim of pushing for cessation of hostilities in the DRC. It is not clear whether President Paul Kagame and President Felix Tshisekedi will attend the meeting.
And finally, Google Maps says it will change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America once it's officially updated in the U.S. geographic name system. The change will, however, only happen in the U.S. Google has applied the same local-based labeling conventions to other locations subject to naming disputes. The BBC's Peter Hyatt has the details.
Google's policy when names vary between countries is for users to see the official local name. So in Mexico, it will still be the Gulf of Mexico. Outside Mexico and the United States, both names will be offered. Renaming the Gulf of Mexico was part of the flurry of announcements President Trump made within hours of taking office. His Mexican counterpart Claudia Sheinbaum's perhaps not entirely serious response, suggesting that North America as a whole should revert to an earlier name, America Mexicana.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed the Preservation and Development of Agricultural Land Bill into law. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
7 after 10 o'clock, welcome to the second hour of the Talking Point. Thanks for all of the interactions in the open line and for calling in, the voice notes that you send, the text messages as well. Brian Mabaye in Protea Glen says South African soldiers, when they go to the DRC, they're always being compromised in a Chuck Norris situation. It's either being killed by the rebels or DRC army. It's nothing new. That's one message there. Somebody else says, Cathy, our government is failing us as its citizens. If they don't have enough support for our soldiers in the DRC, why don't they bring our brothers and sisters back home alive? And that is from Nchareboni out in Tabazimbi. And we've got so many other messages that you've sent through that will also bring, as we recap then, the open line. Coming up in this hour, we are, of course, going to be talking finance with Brian Hirsch. And absolutely, we have also started reaching out to the Department of Defense to try and get a sense, at least officially on the record, what the state of affairs for our soldiers is. Yes, we know that there have been difficulties in terms of them being ill-equipped, not having enough resources, but you heard from Sbu this morning, who says his son is in that, is part of that group that is fighting in the DRC. He says that the base in Goma has been run over and that there are SANDF soldiers that have been captured. That is the allegation that has been put on the radio. We are trying to verify if in fact that is the case. All right, let's play some of your WhatsApp voice notes and then we get into finance.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Cathy, good morning, Mafuta. Cathy, here we are again watching the atrocities that are happening in Congo. After the upheaval in Mozambique, a question that comes to my mind, Cathy, is that where are we going as Africans? Where are we driving this continent? The middlemen, the former colonizers, as agents of our peace, we are not going anywhere, Cathy. That's my thought for today. Africans should come with African solutions for African problems, Cathy.
Cathy, it's high time that South Africans realize that US is the capital of the world. When US sneeze, everyone catches flu. Maybe it is good time that people look into China and Russia for the help and see whether the help, the China and the Russia will deliver that help. US, for some few years to come, will still be the capital of the world. We can't do without US, but we can do without Russia, I suppose. Maybe not China.
Good day, Cathy. Cathy here in Kala. Yes, Cathy, it's our provocative approach to the US. The way this current president has approached, I mean, the way he do things and he speaks about the US, that's what led us to where we are. And many South Africans were hit about his approach. President Cyril Ramaphosa is the worst president of the ANC. We have created enemies with South Africa. So we have to deal with the consequences of what we have did, starting from that Russian ship that was seen in Cape Town, and all these things, the way he talks about that country and the way he behaves, that's what led us to this. And President Trump is targeting South Africa specifically.
Good morning, Cathy and the SFM listeners. If we check our foreign policy with the USA since 1996 until modern time, the US has been bullying South Africa. When we are selling pork from outside South Africa or chicken, the US will say, no, this thing is not good, it's rubbish, it must be brought back to Africa. So the US still thinks that they are the world economic powerhouse of the world, which is not good for us. You can check if their president is to inaugurate, our markets will be down. If the US catches the flu, we must all sneeze, which is bad. So we must try and redo our policy. We can't be bullied by the US for a long time. We got all the minerals that they are taking from us, yet they are still bullying us. Remabai from Proteagland. Thanks for the great show.
Good morning, Cathy. You know, I'm shocked. Close to 50 Padco buses were touched in Mpumalanga, Cathy. What is the motive behind the touching of close to 50 buses? Sure. So, Tisinyolen Mafefele Popo, thank you, Cathy.
Good morning, Cathy. This is Salim. Cathy, if you look at what's happening at DRC and if you look at our defense force and our contribution there, you know, who we really need as Minister of Defense is Bantu Holomisa. He's a military man. He knows. You know, you're putting someone that doesn't know about defense as a Minister of Defense, and you can see we are losing lives. I think there must be changes. Bring in Bantu Lemisa. You see how our defense and the safety of our country will improve.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen. Talking finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
Brian Hirsch, a very good morning to you. Hello, Brian.
Can you hear me clearly?
There we go. Good morning.
Sorry, I'm not in the studio. I have a little bit of bronchitis, and from time to time, in just talking, I lose my voice. So if I lose my voice, we'll quickly go to an ad break.
Okay. Sorry you're not feeling well, Brian.
Yeah. No, I'm feeling fine. Just bad cough, but I'm absolutely fine.
All right. Okay. No, well, hopefully.
But I didn't think it was a great idea to walk up and down stairs.
No, it absolutely is not, and we've made a decision about that, haven't we?
Yeah. So, no, I will be in the studio next week.
Oh, Brian.
I need to see all of you. I like to see your faces, your smiling faces, how happy you are. Love it. It's energizing.
Okay, all right, if you insist, but you know I stand with that issue. Yep. So today, can you believe it, hey? We're already through we're already through the month. It's the last Tuesday of the month. And, every last Tuesday of the month, we, of course, just deal with answering questions that have come up during the month from our listeners. And I wanted to check with you, how's it been going? Because we know that you recently migrated in terms of communication. So you're no longer using the radio line, but you are using the website as the main platform through which people can send through their questions. How's that been going so far?
Exceptionally good response. I don't think big enough response yet for me to do it in auditorium. I still will do it online. Just to remind those who maybe heard me for the first time, I plan to do a lot more education this year, offline from SAFM. There are three components I want to deal with. I want to deal particularly with children who have just recently qualified, who are going to university and are interested in understanding what finance is all about, making your money work for you. We want to avoid them making the same mistakes, unfortunately, that so many of the elderly have made in their lifetime, talking about saving for themselves, not getting overcommitted, not finding themselves in debt. So that's the one component. And there I intend running a course either live or online. And if you want further information on that, you can always email me on www.bhca.co.za. You can also, if you want to be included in my morning notes that come out every day, just giving you an update on market, you also need to let us know, and we'll let you have that. And then the third aspect was the life file, which I've been talking about. What documents do you need to set aside so that you make sure that in the event of premature death, your family is catered for with all the necessary documents? Because when you wind up in a state, the person doing that, who's called the executor, he needs to have a lot of information, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth. You don't know where you're going to get this information. So all those things you can contact us on my website, as well as any financial questions you have. We were having so many trouble with the phone. The numbers weren't coming through. People were getting cut off, and I can only blame that on, I won't blame it on anyone, but we want to be more efficient. So it's www.bhca.co.za, and it's going nicely. We've had a lot of responses. And if you haven't heard from any of us and you've sent us an email, we will communicate with you in the second week of February, just letting you know when we will be conducting these courses.
Brian, it seems almost unbelievable that we are, of course, months into the two-part system, and yet there's still so much, lack of understanding of how it works. One would have thought that by now, administrators of pension funds, the service providers, would have been able to reach their members with educational, informative sessions where they explain to individuals how exactly the system is going to work.
Cathy, I've got a lady, Julia, who's retiring next month. She's been with me 35 years. And I've just been asked by HR department just to write some notes that when we say goodbye to Julia, I can tell you what her real strengths are. Her biggest strength is she can read a communication from cover to cover. And the problem with most of us in South Africa, we read what we want to read without reading from cover to cover and understanding. Julia understands, and that has been her great success for me over all these years. So I'm saying to you, everyone hears and gets correspondence, but let me just clarify simply. There are two components for starters before I get to the two-pot system. The one is you had everyone who contributes to a pension provident fund or retirement annuity, there was a value calculated of all these contributions over the years, plus growth as at the 31st of August 2024. That is ring-fenced now. It has nothing to do with the two-pot system, and individuals will be allowed to draw one-off anything 10% of the value of your fund, limited to 30,000 Rand one-off, or if your fund is less, then you can draw. If you've only got 200,000 in your fund, 10% is 20,000, and if you've got 400,000 in your fund, 10% is 40,000, but you can only draw 30,000. Forget about that's a one-off. And let me share with you, I've had a lot of people, many people explaining to me what they're doing with the money. I'm going to make the following comment. I think it's a terrible system because it's going to impact on retirement. However, for those who are struggling, there are two reasons why I would make use of the two-pot system. One, if you've got unsecured debt or credit card debt where you're paying rates closer to 18 to 20%. Because if your fund is only going to achieve a 9 to 10% performance growth over the years, which is not bad at all, because that's certainly beating inflation, then it makes sense to draw the money out and pay that debt. But let me say that it's easy enough to pay off debt and then 6 months later you're back in the debt. If you're going to pay off some of your debt, make sure that you don't get back into that debt and you don't find yourself in the same situation. The second reason, which I'm hearing, is education. So many people are struggling to pay education, certainly primary education. And if that's the case, there is nothing wrong taking money out of the two-pot system to pay for your child's education. There's nothing more important than we can give our children good values and education. And so that would be a second reason which I would support. But bear in mind, when you draw the 30,000 or lower, you will pay tax. You need to check up what is your tax. If you're outstanding tax, before you get your money, the tax will be deducted from that amount. So you need to make sure your tax is clear, and you also need to understand what tax you're going to pay, because you could pay as little as no tax, as much as up to 45% in tax, depending on your earnings. So that is stage one. Now, stage two is what's happening to contributions made after the 1st of September, future contributions. Your future, so it only deals with future. So there's been only 5 months now of contributions anyway made since then. But at the end of the year, of the amount you've paid, 2/3 will go to the savings, to what's called the retirement pot, and 1/3 towards the savings pot. So to give you an example, if you've made a contribution to this, let's say you've made a contribution of 5,000 Rand, 3,333 Rand will go to the retirement pot, 1,666 Rand will go to the savings pot, and once a year you can withdraw that money, subject to tax again, understand, subject to tax, but you can draw that money to use, and again I repeat, if you've got unsecured debt, not overdraft debt, not bond debt, because your fund will do just as well as that. But if you've got unsecured debt or credit card debt, it makes sense. It will affect your retirement fund. So someone who's been putting in, say, 3,000 Rand a month, 1,000 is going into the savings pot, will be able to draw at the end of the year 12,000 out, and every year. It will affect your retirement, so I'm not even commenting how it will affect your retirement. It will, but if you've got those two elements, saving, a lot of unsecured debt at high rates of interest, and education, fully understand why people withdraw in terms of that two-pot. I hope that helps just to summarize it in a simple way. And if I'm correct, Cathy, our show is on podcast.
Yes, it is.
So if people have missed it or want to get it, go to the podcast of today's program, and you'll hopefully understand for once and for all what this situation is.
Brian, we are, of course, approaching the month of February, and that's where we know we need to start talking and focusing on tax. One of the questions that you've been dealing with is around how to save tax before the end of February.
Okay, so let me say there are two tax-free savings abilities, and the one has a saving of tax and the other one has a saving of tax in terms of investment. So the first one is a retirement annuity. And the retirement annuity is where an individual takes out an individual retirement annuity to make sure that they've got additional funds added to their pension fund when they ultimately retire. Most South Africans do not work from day one in one job, and they move around, and that sometimes they take their money out when they resign from a company instead of preserving it for future retirement. So a retirement annuity allows you, before the end of February, to make a contribution to a retirement annuity. You don't have to commit to monthly contributions. You can make a one-off contribution. That contribution you make, their limits, 350,000 and 27.5% worth of income, including your pension contribution. So I don't want to get too stuck on that. You can talk to a financial advisor about that. But whatever you pay before the end of February will be deducted from your taxable income. So if you're earning 300,000 Rand and you make a contribution of 30,000 Rand to retirement, you will only be taxed on 270, and you will save anything at that level around about 31% of the contribution, up to a maximum at a highest tax rate of 45%. That's a great way to save tax. Now, if someone is not able to put an annual contribution, start in March making a monthly contribution. You go to your salaries department, you let them know that you're making a contribution, and the tax that you're saving, you will save on your take-home pay, because your salaries department will adjust the PAYE tables accordingly to what you contribute to retirement annuity. And that will add ultimately to your retirement savings. The second mustn't be confused. That's what we call the tax-free savings account. Here, you're not going to get a tax deduction. You're going to pay with after-tax rands, earn your money, pay your tax. There you're allowed to put in 36,000 Rand a year, but that 36,000 Rand with a limit of 500,000 Rand, all growth in that fund is tax-free. So if you make an investment in a unit trust for 36,000, that's not in a tax-free savings account, they will pay tax on any interest earned, they will pay tax on any capital gain, and when companies declare dividends, they'll pay dividends tax. You will save that in the tax-free savings account, and if you calculate what that'll be worth over the years to come, you'll find that you'll be better off around about 20% by doing a tax-free savings. And you need to do that in the tax year before the February, but I'm repeating, it's not a tax deduction. It means it is tax saving in terms of the tax paid in those funds under a tax-free savings account. And remember, whilst I talk 28th of February, many companies close their books earlier to make sure that they've got time to get everything in order so that you can get your tax certificates accordingly.
So, Brian, in terms of the retirement annuity, so if I know you've spoken about this previously around how we need to make the calculation, because sometimes maybe what you're contributing monthly is below the ceiling, is below the maximum of what you should be contributing. How do we make those calculations?
Okay, well, firstly, affordability becomes one thing, but remember, affordability, so I'll give you a perfect example. Someone earning 300,000 Rand a year puts 20,000 Rand away into retirement annuity. They will save around about 31%. So 31% on 20,000 is 6,000. So let's do it the other way. I'm making an investment of 20,000. I'm saving 6,000 Rand in tax, so it's only costing me 14,000. And my 14,000 is now being invested at 20,000 because I've now invested the 20. That is nearly a return of 40%. Where are you going to get such a return from the receiver of revenue? So each person needs to talk to their financial advisor. The banks have financial advisors. Give them your information, give them what you've earned, let them sit with you and do the calculation and advise accordingly. You're allowed 350,000 Rand a year, less what you're already contributing to either your pension and provident fund or previous retirement annuities. But there's no better way of putting money away for yourself and the receiver of revenue paying towards that. Before I get shouted down, yes, there are tax consequences at retirement, but you're paying at retirement, you're never going to pay the same rate of tax than you were paying, can't say never, but most people will not pay the same rate of tax at retirement as they will be paying while they're working. Their tax rate is always a lot higher. Certain expenses fall away. You may, to have what you were earning at retirement is virtually impossible.
Okay.
You'll have a percentage. So from that point of view, wonderful way to save tax and get a good investment.
Mr. Monetti, you're calling us from Kimberley. Good morning.
Good morning, Osketi. Good morning, Brian. Good
morning, Mr. Monetti.
Mr. Brian, I'm really hopeless. I don't know where to run because my mom's house was being sold without my consent and my late sister's consent. So I've really
Sorry, say that again?
My mom's house was sold by my sister without my consent and my late sister's consent. And
but sorry, okay, but sorry, who? What name? Look, I think you may need to call me offline, or send me an email, and I'll come back to you. But very simply, was the home sold by the executor?
Oh, it was sold by my siblings.
But how could it be sold by your sisters? Whose name was it registered in?
No, all of us were executors of the house.
So. Okay, call.
So, Mr. Monetti, how many people is that?
We had 6, and then my sister passed on. Then we were 5. Then the 4 decided, the 3 decided to sell the house. Then the 2 refused.
And what's happened to the money?
The money, they sold the house for about 120,000. Then I come up with an offer of 140. Then the master rejected my 140 offer and then opt for 120. And I asked the master, how can he reject my 140 offer? Then he never gave me a sound reason.
Yeah, Mr. Monetti, I'm sure you got my email address where I'm taking questions. www.bhca.co.za. Send me the facts, send me your phone number, and I'll make contact you later today.
So, Mr. Brian, can you repeat the email number?
Okay, Mr. Monetti, I'm going to repeat that number for you in a second. I'm going to put you through to Angela. She'll, in fact, give you the details as well. For now, it's 10:30. Time for your latest headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines on SAFM, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. Advocacy groups have welcomed a ruling of the High Court in Pretoria that the application criteria to access the social relief of distress grant were unconstitutional. President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed the Preservation and Development of Agricultural Land Bill into law. It ensures that agricultural land supports long-term food production and contributes to economic growth. And Mpumalanga Roads and Transport MEC Thulasizwe Thomo has condemned the settling alight of Patco Bus Company's buses. He has described the torching of 50 buses as a setback for commuters. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 82 to the dollar, 23 rand 40 to the pound, and 19 rand 63 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JSE weaker in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are mainly firmer. Gold is trading at $2,740. Platinum $936 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $77.74 a barrel.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we're talking finance with Brian Hirsch. And Mr. Monetti in Kimberley, Brian will get in touch with you. Please just send your details on his website and he will be able to reach back out to you to find out how he can assist you. And that really is around the estate of his late mom, it sounds like, and siblings having sold the house. There seems to not have been unanimity amongst them in terms of what should happen. Brian, unfortunately, this is a scenario that we encounter ever so often. How should we be structuring some of these matters within estates to ensure that these issues can be prevented? Is it even preventable?
Well, remember, unfortunately, for assets under 250,000 is a much easier process than having to wind up an estate for assets above 250,000. It's very, very different. However, at some stage, someone would have been authorized to act on behalf of it's highly unlikely that all of them were to have 6 people as an executor is absolutely laborious. Too much document needs to be signed. So I need to see that information. What I found amazing is the master turned down an offer of 140,000 and accepted 120. However, the 140,000 may have been a dicey offer. But very simply, when you have a will, you have an executor, and your executor has to carry out the wishes of that will. And I said I was going to talk about wills today. I didn't realize it was the last week, so I'll do that next week. But very simply, the role of an executor. There was a recent case that came to the Cape Supreme Court last week, which was ruled on, where an executor was told they had to resign and appoint new executors for 2 reasons. 1, because they weren't complying, and 2, there was a conflict of interest. And that's also an important thing I'll talk about next week. And I'll report back on what I've ascertained and discovered regarding Mr. Manetti's case.
All right, Brian, thanks for that. So before we then continue with the questions that are coming through for you, remember you can send your questions for Brian on 086 000 2032. It is the last Tuesday of the month, so we're taking your questions mostly. 086 000 2032 on the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Before we continue with the questions, Brian, that have come through on your particular platform, I want to deal with this one building from last week. It's on student loans.
Hello, Katie. Katie, kids the university are opening, and students will be going to universities. So I want can Brian please advise to students what they should consider when they are applying for the student loan? Because a lot of students are applying for the student loan. So just wanted Brian to advise students that are applying for the student loan what to look for, what to not look for on the loans, because they involve money.
Yes, I've done a little memo on that, and again, if those who want that, who would like that information that's been requested by this caller, again, please send onto my website www.phca.co.za. It's quite laborious. I won't go through it on radio today, but I will send you what you need to do, how you need to go about putting that application to give you the best chance of getting a loan for your child.
All right, thanks for that, Brian. Let's talk then about the question. Let's deal with the question around on offshore investing and the benefits of investing offshore.
Yeah, look, I won't go through the benefits of investing today. The questions I'm getting is, should I be putting some of my offshore living annuity, my pension fund offshore, and why? Now, under current legislation, when you contribute to a retirement fund, only 45% of that investment can go offshore. But once you've taken retirement and you're in a living annuity, you have the choice of investing 100% offshore. But the reasons for investing offshore are threefold. The first is, which is important, is it gives you the opportunity of having diversification and spreading your risk. Understand that the top companies in the world do not, whilst they trade in South Africa, they're not listed in South African markets. They're listed globally. So if you want to be investing in the top healthcare companies, the top technology companies, the top pay systems like Visa card, MasterCard, the top healthcare companies, you have to go offshore. And that's where over the years to come, money is going to be made. It doesn't mean we don't have some reasonably and good companies here. We have phenomenal management. Our South African management are in demand when they leave South Africa because of their training. But that's the first thing. The second is protection against the weaker rand. And I was a little disappointed when Cathy read out the market report to see the rand again at 1884. Last Friday, the rand was 1833. That means the rand has appreciated since last Friday by 3%. Why? Because there was a problem in one stock. A Chinese company came out, and the Chinese company was a company called DeepSeek. They came out, this is very much regarding artificial intelligence, they came out that they can do chips, and as you know, you can't do anything today without computer chips. They can do it at 1/10 of the cost that all the other top companies came down, and after that, the American companies came down anything between 15 to 20% on that news. It's far early to say what's going to happen, but all I'm saying is, so the rand weakened, and the rand weakened, and the oil price is still at 77. It means we're probably expecting next week to have a petrol hike, and that's not good for inflation. We like to have these coming down. And then the third reason, which is obviously, is there's no restriction on offshore exposure. But for those in retirement who have a living annuity, it has to be managed, and it must be managed by someone. You can't just have bought a living annuity, drawing an income, and it's not managed by a financial planner. Make sure your financial plan is earning money, earning a commission, anything between 0.5% and 0.75%. Make sure they're working for that money, and make sure that they are giving you advice. Over.
The last one, Brian, is of course one that can also often be a bit... shall I say, not contentious, but just it's a difficult one to try and manage. How spouses should be handling their financial planning, right? Because you're not just planning for yourself independently, but you're planning together. How should you be going about it so that the process is seamless?
Well, I think it's very important that there's communication between spouses in relation to their joint financial planning, which includes budgeting and expenses. I think debt disclosure is critical. Both parties need to know what's happening. I think goal setting is absolutely discussing the financial goals, the values, the spending habits, determining who's paying for what. Because even though 1 in 3 marriages end in divorce, there's still many, 2/3 that survive. And you know, if you think about it, I think back many years when if you created a pension fund for a company where people are already employed, every employee has a choice whether to join that pension fund. And there were 2 statements made. When husbands said, I've got to go and talk to my wife, it was rubbish. They didn't want to join. When a wife said, I want to go and talk to my husband, it was absolutely true. And we found, but how can families live on one income if both parties are working? So that discussion is absolutely critical. And understanding income and expenses, understanding how you're investing. It doesn't mean you have joint investments. Everyone must have their own investments. And then you need to also understand what effect your marriage regime has, because there's married in community, out of community, with accrual, without accrual. Then you've got to have a look at the healthcare situation of the family, and then you've got to look at what happens if premature death, what happens if one partner gets disabled. So it's a whole minefield. But so when you sit with your husband and you start to talk about finances and do that budgeting, if you both feel comfortable, include your financial advisor and let them know. It doesn't mean you're only going to have one plan for both of you. You're going to have your separate plans. going to work together. You also got to realize what happens if you're younger and you're going to have children. What happens if you stop work and you actually leave the job? You're not just in maternity leave. What happens to your savings plans? There's a lot to discuss. Maybe, Cathy, a separate program. Maybe I should deal with that and let's deal with it next week. I'm going to deal with wills, and let me deal with it the week after. What should spouses be doing?
So in the meantime then, in terms of the question that you would have received, what is it that people can start working on while we wait for the program that will deal specifically with this question?
I think sitting down together, working through the family budget, working through the expenses, working out who's going to pay for what, understanding clearly, understanding what your requirements are. Are you going to be in debt this year? Not individually, as a group, are you going to be in debt? And then start to ask, if you've got separate financial advisors, ask them to do an update on the portfolio. That would be the starting point, and that can probably take 2 weeks to do, and then we'll deal with it I made a note on the 10th.
All right, no problem then. Thanks for that, Brian. I'm taking your calls for Brian on 086 000 2032 on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Salomani, you are in the Northwest. Good morning.
Hello, Cathy. I'd like to ask Brian a question. I want to know what the difference is between the Satrix S&P 500 and the S&P 500 in the U.S. I invested myself with using easy equities, but it looks like the Satrix S&P 500 since it's tracking the U.S. S&P, but it goes the opposite direction. When the U.S. one goes up, the Satrix S&P 500 goes down. I mean, why the discrepancy? Why doesn't it just follow the same the same direction?
I agree with you. I can't answer that because the Satrix S&P 500 is the index, and so is the American. So I can't understand it. Have you got empirical proof? Have you got something that you can show me?
Yes, I mean, I don't know if I can show you, but the S&P last week was going up, and my S&P 500 was going down. So I just couldn't make sense of it. And when I investigate, they talk about the rand dollar situation.
Oh, you mean okay. So the underlying index will work the same way, but if you're invested globally, a dollar is a dollar. If you're invested in South Africa, then the rand depends on the value of the dollar. And if the rand, the rand strengthened, last week it strengthened from over 19 to 1833, so the conversion may have an effect. But I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll investigate and get numbers this week, and I shall report back in next Tuesday's program.
No, thank you, Brian.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, no, right. It does make sense based on currency, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
All right, Salomani, thanks. Kena, you're in the Eastern Cape. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Good, go for it.
Hi, okay. Good morning. Morning, Brian. I have a very heartbreaking one. You know, I bought a car in 2019. Then, due to financial constraint, I find it myself with an option of going to debt review. So I was in there. So now, at the beginning of last year, I've managed to settle all my other accounts only with that car left. So I've spoken with my lawyer, pursued a court order, and then I got one that was saying, okay, I can be taken out of debt review. Then I sent the court order to the bank that was financing me, hoping that they would be restructuring my account. Remember, the capital of the car was around 285,000. So now, to my surprise, the balloon payment from the restructuring, now that I'm out of debt review, is 210,000. Yet I've never missed any month, and from what was required of me to pay 4,000 rands, I've paid about 5.5. But now in 2025, when I'm only 8 months to finish my bill, they are saying on your balloon you'll be paying 210. And remember, we've taken all the interest that was on your debt review. And I was like, but if I was on debt review, you structured because of the debt review scenario. But now I'm out. Can't you just restructure back? And So it's just an interest issue, and they are really killing me because I'm finding myself buying a car that looks like a house on finances. Can you help me on that?
Look, my immediate reaction is the following. There are two ways of financing a motor car. One is where you have the purchase price of the motor car, and they calculate you're going to repay back over 5 years, and they're going to charge you interest, and they calculate that, and they give you a monthly amount, and that monthly amount is affected either up or down depending on interest rates, whether interest rates go up or interest rates go down. Okay. The other way is where people take a balloon payment. They can't afford to pay their monthly installment over the 5-year period. So what they tend to do is they start to finance it at much lower with a balloon payment at the very end. And I would suspect that's what you did. You financed it with a balloon payment, and come the end, your last installment is the full amount owing. Now, you would have paid interest, a lot more interest, because you weren't paying any capital off during the fund, and it's all going to be paid at the end. That's all I can assume in terms of balloon payments. I'm a little bit puzzled when you talk to me about going into debt review. What happened during that period, and what did they actually do? When you went into debt review, did they reduce the installment that you needed to pay because of your inability to, and because of you being under debt review?
Yes, they did with $700, but 2 months later, after they did, I've paid 1,000 rands more. So it was like there was no point of that. And lastly, I've realized that all the 1,000 rands that I was paying them, they had a separate account that they were saying, we have this money that we have not done anything with.
Okay.
That we were thinking we're going to take it to your balloon. And my balloon initially was 80 grand, which I could afford. That's what I agreed on. But I was surprised now to 210 on a 285,000 rand car.
And how much is in that other account where you're putting extra 1,000 rand a month?
On the other accounts.
Yes, that they weren't putting to the balloon payment, but they were separating the extra 1,000 you're paying. How much is in that account?
It's about 40-something thousand. That's what they said.
How many?
40-something thousand. They said we have 40-something thousand that is sitting there.
Okay.
In which I believe is those 1,000 rands.
Okay, so that will obviously come off your balloon payment, but there's another problem. You know, if you paid that 1,000 rand and they were working towards you would have paid some capital, and therefore you would have got a much better return than having it in a separate account just earning interest. So you need to get those numbers, and if you get those numbers for me, who's financing it?
It's MFC under Nedbank.
Under Nedbank. Okay, I've given my email and my radio line out this morning. Have you picked that up?
Yes, I did.
Okay, send me details. I'll have a look at it, and I'll talk to, and depending on who the financial company is, I'll talk to them to try and understand the numbers in terms of what they've got to. So I'll certainly look at it for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, man.
Pleasure.
All right. Sure. Okay, Gina, all the best. Hopefully you get the help that you need on that particular issue. Brian, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm back with more calls. I see some of the messages that we have coming up next are dealing specifically with estate disputes too.
Outsurance has another random fact for you. In 1999, a litre of petrol cost just under 3 rand. Now it's about 21 rand. It's scary how prices keep going up. In times like these, it's encouraging to know that Outsurance has got your back and is committed to saving you money on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Danica knows all about saving on her 2018 Haval H2.
I saved 455 rand. It was quick and easy.
Here's Lebo with her sweet 644 rand saving on her 2019 Mazda CX-3.
Gave me the best quote ever. My savings is 644 rand. Come join Outsurance and save some money.
You heard it here first. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
There will be joy and heartbreak at the Groenkloof Tennis Stadium in Pretoria. South Africa takes on Nigeria. The South is up against the West. This is the Davis Cup World Group 2 tie, the World Cup of tennis. Witness the spectacular tennis battle between South Africa and Nigeria on Saturday 1 February at 11 a.m. and Sunday 2 February at 10:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. You can also catch the Sunday action on SABC 3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. All SASA Gold cards will stop working on the 28th of February 2025. Replace yours today with the new Postbank Black Card at no cost. Join hundreds of thousands of grant beneficiaries already receiving their grants on their new Postbank Black Cards. For your convenience, you can collect your card at multiple locations nationwide. Card replacement points are at selected ShopRite Checkers, Pick n Pay and Boxer stores. To find a location near you, dial *120 *218 *3 hash. Don't wait. Upgrade your card today for free. Trusted by millions for 150 years. Postbank, your bank.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
While we're still taking your questions for Brian, Willem in Bloemfontein says, my father got divorced from my mother and got married to another woman who has a child my age. My father passed away and I was told that everything will go to his new wife. 4 years later, his wife also passed away and I was told that her child will be the one inheriting everything, including the car and house. There was no will made. She has now sold that house. That's one perspective there. Mpo, you are in Zanin. You also want to talk about issues around estate planning and disputes.
I need to find out.
Mpo, I'm going to ask you to try and move around a bit because the connection to you is not great. We're struggling to hear you. Hello, Mpo. All right, we'll see if we can get Mpo up back on a different line. I guess, Brian, the issue here is that if you don't leave a will and if you don't leave your affairs in order, it does open up room for the chaos.
Yes, because very simply, it's going to go to the next of kin unless the caller was dependent. And if the caller was not dependent on the father, then there's no claim from a retirement point of view. If you die intestate, then ultimately you're not in a position to decide where the assets are going to. Assets would have been paid to the second wife. And then the second wife, in terms of freedom of testate, whether she has a will or not, her assets will go to her next of kin, which is her son. And there's very little you can do. What you needed to do was to have questioned at date of your father's death why it was all going to his second wife, and if there were any other, and at that particular point of view, you could have, although it's a very difficult thing to, but this was where you died intestate, you would have to have dealt with the master and come back with certain things. Nothing you can do. That's why it's so important, and I'll deal with wills next week.
I was going to say, are there ways in which people need to be bringing some of these conversations up?
Yes,
intentionally so.
Particularly with second marriages, because you have a child by first marriage, you have another child from the second marriage, or you've got stepchildren. That's why you then need to determine where are your assets going. How do you do it? And without a will, you leave it in abeyance, and you leave it for for the master to make a decision who's going to inherit. And you leave it in no man's land. Absolutely critical. And 80% of people globally don't have wills, and they think it just works. Well, if you want your assets to go to parties, and it's not maybe your wife or next of kin, you need to record it. And what's recorded in the will, the executor will deal with in terms of distribution.
Good morning, Cathy and Brian, and the SAFM listeners. It's Keshi here from the Western Cape. I have a question about an antenuptial contract. A South African living in Dubai marrying a person from Bulgaria, and they are being married in the United Arab Emirates. How would the antenuptial contract work? Would it be according to the law of South Africa, or how does it work? If you wouldn't mind letting me know. Thank you. Bye.
Yes. Yeah, the anti-nuptial will work depending on the country you're in. I mean, if you're in South Africa, you have a choice of ANC, you have in community property, ANC with or without accrual. In years gone by, there was only two formats, ANC or in community. Now we have an ANC. But depending, I can't comment at all about if you're getting married in Dubai, what the laws are of that country and the laws are in terms of marriage regime. You would need to check that up. Sorry, I can't help you on that one.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your honesty on that one, Brian. I think maybe then just to round off the conversation, we've lost Mpho Nzanin. Mpho, I'm so sorry that we weren't able to get you back up on the line. The connection to you simply is not great. So, Brian, let's run through your contact details again for all of our listeners.
Just to make it easier, I'm saying if you've got any questions or queries, you want any advice, you want to join any of our educational programs, you want the life file, www.bhca.co.za. I will answer next week the story and give you an explanation. I understand the understanding of SATRAX SMP in South Africa versus the SMP. I'll come down to that, and we'll be dealing with wills next week. And in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be dealing with a very important component about joint couples.
Fantastic. Brian, thank you as always. A pleasure chatting to you. Brian Hirsch will be back next week, Tuesday. And of course, his email address, www.bhca. So that's the website that you can go onto, www.bhca.co.za, bhca.co.za, and there you can then put in your queries in terms of the issues you would like Brian to help you resolve. Coming up on the other side of the latest news update, we'll be going back to the Northwest Province, reviewing the state of transport in that particular province. This is in light of bus services that are said to have collapsed, particularly public bus services. We, of course, have this conversation in the midst of what we're seeing happening in Mpumalanga, right? How absolutely devastating for the Patco bus service that so many of its vehicles have been torched overnight. So a rather concerning story indeed. That's what you can expect in the second hour of the show, or rather in the final hour of the show. We're expected to be joined by the head of department in the Department of Community Safety and Transport and Management in the Northwest Province. Before we get to that, your latest 11 o'clock news update.
Thank you, Cathy. In the top stories, 4 more South African soldiers killed in the DRC and a court ruling on the social relief grant welcomed. For SFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. We start with breaking news. 4 more South African soldiers have been killed in Goma in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This brings to 13 the total number of members of the SANDF killed in the region in less than a week. Last Friday, 9 South African soldiers were killed in fierce fighting with M23 soldiers who claim to have taken control of Goma. Meanwhile, the SANDF says it has met with the families of the soldiers who were killed last week. SANDF spokesperson Siphiwe Dlamini says they are not sure when the bodies will be repatriated.
What we have done since the loss of lives, we have dispatched our chaplain generals, people, the chaplaincy. We have dispatched social workers and psychologists to visit the families and inform the families, and not only inform the families but support the families. And we are now waiting to make sure that the remains of our members prepared in Goma repatriated back to South Africa. I am not in a position to tell you when exactly will they be repatriated.
Palestinians are for a second consecutive day making their way along the coast road to northern Gaza. Hamas says that more than 300,000 people have returned to what remains of their homes. The BBC's Nick Beck has the details.
It's thought as many as 500,000 more Gazans will be embarking on the same journey home that the first wave undertook yesterday. Hamas police officers are maintaining order. Egyptian security forces are checking vehicles for weapons, and Israeli soldiers watch on as this delicate ceasefire holds for now. Aid agencies report that the pause in the fighting has allowed them to boost significantly the amount of aid getting into Gaza. But the accounts returnees are giving of the devastation they're finding underscore the enormity of the task.
Advocacy groups have welcomed a ruling of the High Court in Pretoria that the application criteria to access the social relief of distress grant were unconstitutional. The judgment focuses on the restrictive criteria for grant eligibility, the challenges that an electronic application platform and the insufficient income threshold pose. Advocacy group Pay the Grant, which brought the application, says that the ruling will benefit vulnerable South Africans who depend on grants. Elizabeth Reuters is the deputy chairperson of Pay the Grants.
The government is aware that so many people actually need this grant, and South Africa does have the money to pay these beneficiaries. I don't think that you can introduce a grant and not look at the amount of beneficiaries that needs to access this grant. We need to go back to the drawing board with SASSA and social development and actually fix all these errors that has been made in this grant. We are actually hopeful that the department does implement all these new regulations that the court has put down.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed the Preservation and Development of Agricultural Land Bill into law. It ensures that agricultural land supports long-term food production and contributes to economic growth. The law creates an enabling environment for the development of the agricultural sector. President spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says it reinforces South Africa's efforts to ensure that agricultural land is used optimally to support long-term food production.
The law supports government's objectives and priorities in respect of the sustainable management and use of natural resources. It also sets out a countrywide policy and regulatory framework for the preservation and development of agricultural land.
Mpumalanga Roads and Transport MEC Thulasizwe Thomo has condemned the setting alight of Patco Bus Company's buses. He has described the torching of 50 buses as a setback for commuters. 2 of the company's workers were wounded following the attacks which happened overnight at various depots. Thomo says police should investigate and swiftly arrest the perpetrators.
This incident is not only a loss for the bus company, but also a severe setback for our communities who depend on these public transport services for their daily commuting. The impact on our residents, particularly in the Ngangala district, cannot be overrated. We are particularly concerned about the effect this destruction will have on our passengers who rely on Patco bus services to access various employment and services across the district and outside the borders of the province. As a result, the bus company must make arrangements and ensure that commuters are not left stranded.
Recapping the top story, 4 more South African soldiers have been killed in Goma in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This brings to 13 the total number of members of the SANDF killed in the region in less than a week. I am Ondelambana for SAFM News, headlines at 11:30.
The Toffees are well aware that only maximum points will help them out of the bottom half.
Lewin, great feat, brilliance, absolutely superbly done. Calvert-Lewin for Everton.
Meanwhile, the Foxes believe they are in dire need of victory to run away from trouble.
It's Jordan Ayew, back in goal, Jordan Ayew has scored for Leicester City, and those Leicester fans are celebrating wildly.
This is the Premier League. Experience the superb contest, Everton FC versus Leicester City FC, on Saturday 1 February at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 7 after 11 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final hour of The Talking Point. Absolutely concerning news coming out of the DRC. You heard that update in the 11 o'clock news, that is really that the number of soldiers, South African soldiers killed in the DRC has now increased. It just reminded me of Spu's call, who started off our open line this morning. A plea from a father asking for more reinforcements, asking for more help, equipment to be sent to the DRC, given his son is there. And you'd remember all of the details that he shared with us. In fact, we'll end off this hour of the show just replaying that call that we received from Spu. We have been trying to get in touch with the South African Defence Force to confirm, to verify part of what Spu had said to us based on what his son, who was deployed with that battalion out in the DRC, had told him last night. All right, for our final conversation of the day then, we're going to focus on the state of public transport in the Northwest Province. Just about 2 weeks ago, we received a call from Tsepo in Dinokana. He had raised concerns about the public bus service in his area. He said that the services had been suspended, which had left commuters completely stranded. They're in remote areas. They don't have a lot of options in as far as public transport, and they now had to make do effectively with the situation. This is what he had to say.
What disappoints me as a person who uses those buses is that most of the people who were relying on it solely they left stranded. No one has ever updated them, informed them what might be the problem. As I'm speaking with you, people are vulnerable. I've been listening to people, they are in a happy mood because of matric results, but here in Dinokana, in Northwest, tomorrow it's a school day. Most of the learners are relying on those buses, even some teachers, because they are coming from remote areas to another remote areas whereby there are no alternative transport. Now you ask yourself that we have a government that is not caring to its people. What worries us a lot is that since the collapse of the company, it was around November till now, in between, the majority of people who are vulnerable, the low-income workers, left stranded. They don't know what to do. It's sad because the government of the day, under the leadership of the MEC of Transport here, MEC Moroeng, it's silent. It don't engage with the people who are mostly affected. The drivers, it's for 5 months, they are not paid. What type of a government is this one, this Cathy?
So those were the concerns raised by our listener at the time, Tsepo in Dinokana. The head of department for the Department of Community Safety and Transport Management in that province is Dr. Hans Gekana. He's on the line. Of course, Dr. Hans, 2 weeks ago, you committed to not only resolving the issue in as far as there being an interim plan for residents out in the Northwest affected by the collapse of some of these service providers. You also, of course, were going to give an update in terms of where you are with the appointment of a new service provider. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and good morning to SAFM listeners.
What update do you have for us, Dr. Kekana?
No, thank you very much, Cathy, for the opportunity. Indeed, we promised to come back, and we appreciate the opportunity to update the community. In relation, let me start with scholar transport first before I come to commuter. In relation to scholar transport, we did indicate that we were going to observe the state of readiness for the reopening of schools. Indeed, that process went as planned. We have picked up with incidents here and there of few schools where there were delays from service providers who some of them pitched late, and in some instances, some did not pitch at all. The main cause at the time was the delayed payments that were still being processed by the department. We have since paid all the scholar transport outstanding fees, except for instances where there's been route verifications that are outstanding. It's a normal day-to-day continuous process. So we managed to avert that challenge. Most of the scholar transport operators are now fully operational. They're taking children to school. Indeed, it is true that, as the caller indicated, there were those learners who were relying on commuter bus because they are traveling less than 5 kilometers, but would then use a commuter bus to go to school. In this case, Atamelan Bus Services, whose services has unfortunately collapsed as we indicated. What we did not anticipate, Cathy, was that the company would abruptly drop services to an extent where there's no single bus. And they did that immediately, almost at the tail end of December, that there were no buses. When we came back in January, there was not even a single bus from the company. Fortunately, on our side, our troubleshooting mechanism was also in place. The procurement process, as promised, is closing on Friday the 31st for the procurement of a reputable bus company that will then provide us a service. We have already put systems in place to make sure that by Friday, when the procurement timeline lapse at 11, we get underway to process the remaining work that should be done. We have given ourselves a week to make sure that we get the service provider that will provide this long-term service. Unfortunately, we had to continue engaging with the taxi industry to assist us, to double up in terms of areas where totally the service was purely reliant on this commuter service that was provided by Atamela. So where we are, the truth of the matter is that it is not 100% operational, smooth sailing process. We are relying on what we have, and what we have is the service of the taxis, our internal process, which is almost coming to an end, and we promise commuters to come up with a long-term solution in this regard. Thanks, Cathy.
Just unpack for us, what does the service of the taxis entail? So what kind of arrangement have you reached with the industry? Is the department subsidizing the cost of that transport? What has gone into this agreement?
Well, we don't have, first of all, the agreement is not even in writing. We've had a meeting, like I indicated, with the provincial chair of a taxi council that is operating in most of the areas that we operate in Nakamudi Mlema. So they've held their own meetings separately to assist in multiple trips, and in making more taxis available in areas where there's dire need, especially your Ramotsermila areas that are a bit far-flung in terms of the rural nature. So they've doubled up their efforts in that space, assisting us to provide and troubleshoot, especially for commuters that are going for work. Remember, our work generally as transport providers, Cathy, is reliant on what I call 4 critical pillars, which is transport availability, transport accessibility, connectivity, and transport affordability. In this case, now we are struggling the challenge of availability for commuter buses, and we are relying on the taxis. There's no subsidy, as you know. subsidy transport in the country is mainly for commuter bus. Taxis are not subsidized, and our people are still feeling the pinch of having to pay an extra buck as opposed to if there was public transport. These are the true facts, Cathy, which we can hide. And we're putting them bluntly there to say we know it's going to cost, it's already costing the public a bit more, but we are coming up in a few days with a long-term solution. We did not anticipate, I must repeat, abrupt stoppage of services by Atamelang bus service.
So then, just to be clear in terms of what you're saying, Dr. Gegana, as things stand, there is no interim plan that the department has put in place.
There's no interim plan in terms of actual provision of service.
Yes.
There isn't, but there's a plan in terms of actual replacement for long term, which process is almost at 95%, as I indicated.
Realistically, when we look at the procurement processes of the state, they tend to take some time. So when can the people of Dinokana and surrounding areas expect that public services in terms of public transport will be restored?
The current contract extended the termination contract with Atamelang ends. The termination notice ends at the end of, it's the 21st of Feb. That's the termination notice. So they were supposed to provide this service up to the 21st of Feb. But here and there, you'll see one bus going the way, the other one. That's why I'm saying it's a total collapse. Now, the one part in terms of our processes, we've done the route map and the project plan. Our anticipation is that at the worst case scenario, on the 1st of March, we'll be having a new provider providing the service to the people of Ngakamudirmulem.
Are you going to be recovering any monies from the Atamelang bus service? Because this is 2 months worth of services that they would effectively be paid for. Have they already been paid for these 2 months? And how are you going to ensure that there isn't any wasteful expenditure with regard to their role and their lack of, their inability to actually provide services during this period?
Thanks, Cathy. First of all, we have not paid Atamelang. We only pay you for the service that you render. But equally, when you fail to render the service, we also issue penalties for DNOs, did not operate. So Atamelang has got a mountain of DNOs, and from our side, contractual is there. They know that there will be penalties, they will be penalized. In instances where there was an operation and there would have been DNOs here and there, the penalties would be deducted from the certificate that they would provide for that month. If the certificate is 10 rands and the DNOs amounts to 3 rands, we'll only pay them 7 rands. In this case, there's totally no service. Then the penalties will then result in our legal processes to recoup from this organization for having failed to provide the service in terms of the contract. So the breach of contractual obligations leading to the DNOs will then apply.
We're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Hans Gegana, Head of Department in the Northwest Community Safety and Transport Management Department. We'll also, of course, take your calls for him. You heard what he said earlier, that they started off the year, they had the issues with not only the Atamelang bus service, but also had issues with regard to the scholar transport in the Northwest, based on what he is saying and your experience in that part of the country. Do the two correlate? Are there issues that we need to be taking up with him that perhaps we are not aware of? Please get in touch. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107.
There will be joy and heartbreak at the Groenkloof Tennis Stadium in Pretoria. South Africa takes on Nigeria. The South is up against the West. This is the Davis Cup World Group 2 tie, the World Cup of Tennis. Witness the spectacular tennis battle between South Africa and Nigeria on Saturday 1 February at 11 a.m. and Sunday 2 February at 10:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. You can also catch the Sunday action on SABC 3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SABC CSI, in partnership with SAFM, will be giving away 20 laptops to Tetlanyo Secondary School in Kimberley on the 31st of January 2025. Tetlanyo Secondary School has been nominated by the SABC to receive 20 laptops after writing a donation request to enhance their ambitions to be 4IR compliant and increase the number of learners ready to participate fully and productively in the country's economy. Tune in to SAFM on the 31st of January and listen to The Talking Point, broadcasting live from the Tetlanyo Secondary School. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Good morning, Cathy. This is GS Mospacing. Cathy, that caller that you had earlier from Dinokana is one hell of an activist who's filled up the shoes that were left by his father. His father is Philemon Matole. Philemon Matole, one of our great social activists from the village Aid Cake in the Northwest. We've been crying of services in the Northwest. You know, there's nothing in the Northwest, Cathy. People are living in terrible conditions. There's no services, transport, nothing. There's no roads, you know. And well done to him, Tsepo. He's a social activist, a community activist, you know, seriously advocating for the betterment and the services, provision of services to the people. Thank you. This is GS Mospacing.
Good morning, Cathy. Cathy, quickly. Can Mr. or Dr. Hans Kekana please ensure that when they allocate contracts to scholar transport and public transport or commuter transport, make sure that these people comply with the requirements of the industry, because most of us as employees in this industry do not receive the same benefits that are supposed to be received by the employees within the industry. And then the sooner the better, because many people are just allocated contracts without complying with some of the issues such as Sabua and the industry. Thank you.
All right, thanks for those voice notes. Dr. Kekana?
Yes, Cathy, I'm here.
Yes, do you want to respond to what our listener has said about... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Cathy. I mean, of course, the first one was a comment about Philemon Matole, an activist in Zerast. I happen to know him myself. So it's this type of people that are keeping us as public servants on our toes. And we appreciate that they are also our extra eyes in communities where we wouldn't reach in some instances. And it is through such activism of Philemon Matole and many others that we are able to pick up some of the challenges that might be far from where we are operating. But the challenge of servicing and of services and roads, the issue of roads in particular, we've held couple of engagement with our sister department, public works. You know how we are structured. Our department in the Northwest is not structured like others in other provinces. So where roads and transport is under one department. In our case, we're only running transport and community safety. Roads is sitting with our sister department, public works. We continue to raise issues with them because In our engagement, what we did as the state of readiness, preparedness for 2024, 25, 26 scholar transport, we held meetings with operators in December and January. At the January meeting, and I'll speak specifically to meetings I've attended in Nakamudi Mulema, where majority of the operators are, there was an outcry about the state of roads where the schools are. And you go to villages as far as Lukhacheng, where most of them were eroded during these heavy rains. So we've held meetings with our sister department, and we've asked them to grade some of these gravel roads and so on. So we are not responsible for roads, but we have engaged our sister department to make sure, because the service providers are complaining about the state of these gravel roads, that the buses are getting damaged and so on and so forth. And we really feel their pain. But we have raised this with our sister department to assist us, because we are not responsible for roads. Okay. In terms of the second caller, yes, Cathy, the last caller was talking about that he was indicating that we must ensure that scholar providers comply. Indeed, Cathy, you remember I said to you, we have also advertised a panel for bus operators only. When this tender of scholar was done, of course, I was not here, but I take full responsibility. It was open to lease operators. Now, people with lease operators means you are not, transport is not necessarily your thing, but you have complied and you have met all the requirements. You submitted the lease contract that proves you've got the bus with an AT certificate. But what most of them then did later on, when they realized that the routes were not profitable, as I indicated in my past interview, they then dropped these good buses that were costing them more and went to hire some buses that were not. So compliance this year, we are going to remove those buses on the road. We've already started, because the panel is approved, it's now implemented, it's in place. We are troubleshooting, we are removing most of these buses from our routes, Cathy, and we'll going back to our 2-year compliance monitoring and inspections of both commuter and scholar transport. Thank you very much, Cathy.
All right. So we've got quite a lot of listeners that have been lined up that want to engage with you. Tsepo, I'm going to push you to the top of the queue because you're the one that sparked this conversation. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Cathy.
Yes.
Yes, I've been listening attentively to Dr. Kekana, the HOD of department, trying to respond to the question that you have put before him. But I'm so disappointed, because what Dr. Kekana is trying to tell the country, to voice the truth, the situation that we are faced with is dire here on the ground. People don't have alternative transport. The interim plan that you were asking him to respond on it, he's not telling the truth. Those taxis that are you referring to, they are not friendly, user-friendly. People are left stranded, and there are places that these taxis cannot even reach. And it happens since from November. It's now February almost. People are still stranded. No one has ever bothered to come on the ground and address them officially. So people have been hearing this information, blah, blah, from, different unreliable sources. Now, for Dr. Kekana to come on radio to tell what he's telling, it's very disappointing, because this matter, Cathy, is not a new matter. It has been there since from 2023. We've been requesting to meet with the department. I even write to the public protector. He responded, advising that Dr. Kekana must intervene, because there are red flags that are indicating that at some point Atamela is going to collapse. Now, knowing our government being tone deaf, they didn't do anything. Lastly, even the MEC, the current one, MEC Mureng, he's the guy from Lihuruti at Moshana. He knows the situation his people are in. Now you fail to understand why our leaders are doing this to our people, the older people who are vulnerable, young school. Yes.
Tsepo, I'm going to ask you to pause it there. Stay on the line. We're going to take the latest news headlines, and then we'll give Dr. Kekana an opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines, 4 more South African soldiers have been killed in Goma in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This brings to 13 the total number of members of SANDF killed in the region in less than a week. Patco Bus Company says it suspects that the torching of its buses is linked to tensions with the local taxi association. And a new study by the Benchmarks Foundation has revealed that legitimate mining companies in South Africa are linked to syndicates that buy gold from illegal miners and inject it to the formal economy. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The Chill Zone with Bertha Charuma.
This trend is going to undo marriage, where people just feel, look, let's just stay together and let's not sign no document.
You know, one of the things in my observation that I've learned over the years is that probably a lot of people don't understand the options that they have in terms of marital contracts, number one. And I think a lot of people have gotten into marital contracts that may not have been favorable. And I think we learn from those that have done it before us. So therefore, we choose not to go that route.
Queen Malobane, Provincial General Manager at Metropolitan.
Bertha Charuma. Fridays, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We've been focusing on the scholar transport, not only the scholar transport, but in general the transport situation in the Northwest Province, in particular in the Dinokana area. Dr. Hans Kekana, the HOD in the Department of Community Safety and Transport Management in that province, is on the line. We also have some of our listeners that want to weigh in on this conversation. So, Dr. Kekana, maybe just directly answer what Tsepo has raised. He says that the situation is dire. You have not come. And when I mean you, I don't mean you, the individual, but the department has certainly not taken any further steps to communicate with residents, which is something that was raised 2 weeks ago as well, that there wasn't clear communication. You said you would address it. According to what Tsepo is saying, that clearly hasn't happened.
No, Cathy, we did, and the MEC also had a special media brief, which we can send both audio and visual, because media companies were here. There was that came specifically for the Atamelang.
Where?
In the department, in the department where Newsroom Africa.
In Dinokana. Did you go to residents?
No, media briefing. Let me explain how we did it, Cathy, so you can understand. We had a media briefing by the MEC in the department, and there were a few media houses that came through. But there's commuter forums. Maybe Tsepo, I'm not sure if it's a member of the commuter forum or not. We have commuter forums. So we had a commuter forum. Of Ngakamudi Rimlema, the chairperson was here with the members. I was in that meeting with the MEC relating the Atamelang issue.
But Dr. Kekana, what yes, surprises me is the fact that this was one of the issues that we dealt with the last time, and it was very clear that the communication coming out of the department was not reaching those that were being affected by the lack of availability of these transport services. And you said that you were going to change that. You said that you were going to intentionally be reaching out to members of the community so that there isn't this communication deficit.
No, we did, Cathy. We've done that. We've also held interviews with Motsweding last week. The latest one was last week.
Did you go to the people? Why is it so hard to communicate directly with people?
It's not hard, Cathy. It's not hard.
No, clearly it is. Clearly it is. If you can't do it, clearly it is very hard.
No, it's not. I'm telling you,
it's not. Here is saying that they have been asking for you to come and speak to the people affected and explain to them and help them understand what you're going to do to resolve the issue.
No, I'm hearing for the first time that Tsepo has been asking for me, and he has even gone to the extent of the public protector, which is not necessary. I'm here, and I can even, if Tsepo maybe has got some information which we might also assist us, I'm willing to meet him directly. Maybe he's leading the people that we are meeting with, maybe are not also, I don't want to say they're not committing further, because there are structures that deals with transport. Commuter forums are responsible for transport communication in the province. There's district, sub-district commuter forums that deals with transport related. There's a commuter forum in Moshana. There's a commuter forum in Ngakamudiri Mulema. These are the people that we meet with. But I can meet with TEPO directly. I don't have a problem. I can assure you that I can meet with TEPO so that we can then say these are the issues that we are dealing with. We are members of the community, Cathy, before we become anything else in society. And as a result, there's no way that I will be afraid of meeting with TEPO or any member of the community. It is our work to do that.
TEPO, let me give you a chance to respond before I let you go.
Let me respond to Dr. Kekan. He's talking about the commuter forum. These are the people that are elected by the passengers. The same forum commuter, the same members of this commuter forum are ineffective this case. Honestly speaking, they are incompetent, they are ineffective. The reason why I end up taking this matter with other passengers and mobilize them is because of this. Secondly, I've been trying to liaise with the HOD through the office of Memo Kwerani. As a manager, I was told by the spokesperson, Oshebenko Nyadit. I've got emails. I even referred to director, Mr. Tladi. He's got the letter from the public protector. He's got my voice note recording. He's got my WhatsApp messages. Even the MEC, lastly, Moraine, the recent one, not the then Mr. Lahari. I communicate with him almost on daily basis, trying to show him the bad situation of this situation. Now, Mr. Moraine blue tick me. I even make a voice note to him saying, Mr. Moraine, you said on Facebook in my inbox that I must communicate with you because you always see me complaining on Facebook, but he didn't come back to me. Now, I want to say to Dr. Kekana that as he's saying he don't have a problem to meet with me, I think the station can give him my numbers and we'll arrange a meeting so that I can escalate some of the things. And then lastly, this case, on November, I escalate this matter to the office, to the Ministry of Transport. I received a correspondence that they received my concern or my complaint as a passenger that is directly affected. And I think people of South Africa now know how the government of Northwest is treating its own people. Our elderly people are at their own. Let me NTS.
All right, Tsepo, thanks for that. Okay, so we'll facilitate then between Tsepo and Dr. Kekana. Harry, you're in Pretoria. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, Harry.
How are you, ma'am?
Yes, I'm good. Harry, go for it.
I'm not good, ma'am. Harry is a director at Tamela. I'm not calling to engage with the HOD Northwest.
Okay, Harry, just to be clear,
let me speak.
Yes, just hang on. I want to verify. You say that you are the director of Atamelang, but is this the Atamelang bus service that has absconded its responsibilities in the Northwest?
That's the company that is running this service in
okay. So it's your company.
Can I speak?
I'm going to give you a chance. I just need to verify what you are saying in terms of who I'm speaking to. All right, sir, you can go ahead.
You see, I was saying I don't want to engage with HOD and Northwest because we have done enough of that with him, in particular. The last meeting I had with him, which they called, was in November, early December. He called us to Rustenburg at the traffic department. We told them what our problems are, which we had been telling them, particularly the HOD, from May last year. Our problem, I need to give a light to what is happening with Atamelang. Who is Atamelang? I agree with Tsepo. I do agree with Tsepo. We are not giving service that we used to give in the Northwest. We are not. But why do we find ourselves? We started in 2004. We got in there. It's just 4 black people who used to work in Northwest Transport Investment. We did that. We came in 2004. We bought brand new buses, Cathy. Over 100 buses, we got those buses there. We ran with those buses with a rate rate ya bona ba re rekisetsang yona, the one that we sell our service to the passengers, the Komolov, is a rate that was decided in 2004, Casey. The bus arena have gone down, they need service, they need maintenance. Every bus, if you go to, I heard somebody, some speaker earlier, I know his name is Azaria Matavo, was speaking about the compliance. If you ask how long do you keep a new bus on the road to give proper, safe, efficient service to your passengers, it must run for 7 years. After 7 years, you refurbish it. After 7, it runs for 7 years. After another 7 years, at about 15, 14, you change the chassis underneath. Now, our buses, Cathy, over 100 have been there since 2004. None of this has happened. You know why? We can only do that if we have the money to do it. The rate that they're paying us, Department EU, is the money that was paid us last 2004. We're still running with it. Our contract ended 2011. In 2011, it has always been extensions, 2 years extension, 1 year extension, 2 years extension. We can't go to the bank. We've got facilities with the bank, women finances, but they cannot give us new buses because our contracts are very short. From 2012, we've been struggling. A number of MECs came in there. Now, Atamelang is not going to be able to transport the passengers because they are stuck. They get stuck. And this thing, when I met with the MEC Muweng, HOD, they were trying to claim it's our fault. I refuse. It's not our fault, Casey. It is at the door of the department. And last May, we met with HOD Kekan. When we told him the situation, including he was together with his director, Tadi, he himself accepted that this business was actually supposed to have collapsed years ago because of rate that you pay. The rate that I'm talking about is like, Kathy, when you Namesamoto from point A to point B, the kilometer per kilometer is so much, 90 cents per kilometer, 99 per kilometer, and then it goes on and goes on. If you tell me now, if you can tell me, can I give me that? Because this man, I've listened to him the last time we were talking to him.
Okay.
We didn't respond.
Harry,
if you are not going to give us a chance to speak, we serve Batubagomolopo region very, very well. And we're crying Libon right now because our business dies in the hands of government there. And people with you guys do not give businesses a chance.
So Harry, I want to find out from you.
Yes.
I hear, what you are saying about how you have been let down by the department, right? And that's something that the department has to answer for. When it came to November, and you then completely withdrawing your services, when your contract effectively would have only ended the end of February, you would have been well aware of the impact that was going to have on residents. Why did you choose to do that?
We didn't choose, Kathy. This is what I'm explaining to you. If you can indulge me, please listen.
Harry, we don't have a lot of time. I've got the book reading coming up, so we don't have a lot of time. Get to it.
Fine. Okay, fine. We didn't choose, Kathy. The buses are not the Maratha. We've got fewer and fewer buses, 30 and 600 centimeters. The Kopani department, I don't know how many times from last year. Last year, can I tell you who fare increase? Every bus company, they've got fare increases every year. Every employee, labor passengers are in the they get salary increases. Our employees, we cannot deny them. We give them salary increases. We've tried our best. There's no September, which was also late. We're going to increase fair increases 30 base for cash. He wrote us a letter in his own letter. We are in trouble. I don't know, please don't implement that. When he comes and talks to you, he does not talk at we want.
So Harry, what you're saying is that the department has been well aware of the state of Atamelang. So what happened in November was not something that should have been a surprise to them. They knew all along.
It's God be my witness. It's not. It is not. Seriously, it's not. That October, he didn't pay us in that day. He didn't pay us. Baberegi went on strike. They went on strike, but we don't have the money to pay them because nobody's paying us.
Okay.
We've got a rate that is very, very low year 2004. We've got the fair increases that have not been implemented currently this year. The unions are going to bargaining council, they're going to ask for salary increases. We have not got that capacity because we have not increased anything. They're denying us to do all those things. They're blocking us.
All right, Harry. I've heard you. I've heard your side of the story in terms of what you are saying is your perspective as Atamelang. Yes, don't go anywhere, Harry. Stay on the line. Stay on the line. Don't go anywhere. Let me bring in Dr. Hans Kekana. Hans, it of course puts a spanner in the works because how you have been relating the story to us and what Harry is saying to us seem to be different perspectives.
Thank you very much. Before I go here, I agree on Tsepo we're going to meet because I really want to. Tsepo must not feel that we are not taking him or his community serious. You have heard him himself. He's saying there are commuter forums, but now he's shifting the blame to say they're incompetent. You see, the issue I was saying, we are communicating, but the structures in the transport space that have been established by communities that we go through. Now, imagine if I was to go to Tsepo, who's not in the structure, or Muliana or accuser, will go to that one and so on. Hence, there's this structure, and I'm glad that he's the one who said it. They selected by commuters, this structure, but we'll meet with Tsepo. And I want to meet Tsepo today, so that we don't go up and down on this matter. Your producer must just send me Tsepo's number so that we close this matter. Tomorrow, we'll go and give you feedback on our discussion with Tsepo. Maybe he can also assist us on the ground. But I'm glad that he has confirmed that there are commuter forums that have been referred to.
All right, Mr. Kekana, that's fine.
Let's go to Harry.
Respond to Harry, please. Yeah. Try to keep your responses as short as possible. We need to get to as many points as possible.
Yeah, no. Thank you very much. Let me go straight to Harry, Cathy. In my nature of work, abdication of responsibility in itself, it's irresponsible. And I don't believe that he would come to radio and abdicate responsibility of providing a service that his company is being paid for on the basis of a fair increase, which is an issue we've discussed with them. There are two other companies that are operating at the same rate as Atamelang is. It's Tari bus services in Madibeng, operating 100 and something, 50 something buses. They are operating the same tariff now, operating in Dr. RSM 18 buses. We've got Bujanala bus services operating in Rustenburg 235 buses, same rate. For the same period that his company was contracted, these other two companies were contracted for 20 years. But the difference between what he's referring to and what these other two companies did is that these two companies took the same money that was paid at the same rate and recapitalized their own fleet. They're still operational now. Same rate, same everything. Two companies. Bujanala is operating the biggest fleet in Rustenburg, 235 buses. Tari is operating another 150-something buses in Madibeng, 18 buses in Dr. RSM. They were supposed to do the same, operating 122 buses. We are not saying the issues of increases. He's correct. I wrote to them to say you can't unilaterally increase the fares to commuters. There's a process that we follow in this regard. So For me, I didn't expect that we'll be having this as a discussion with a company owner who knows that he's abdicating responsibility, and that on itself is being irresponsible.
And
That's
to the extent that he says they were in contact with you and told you about the state of affairs and told you about the difficulties, but you effectively did nothing about it, and in the end came out being surprised that they had gone under.
No, we are not surprised, Cathy. We have met with them and we have said to them, we are paying you the same amount that we are paying other people. They are providing this service. They are recapitalizing their fleet. We don't want to ask what people do with their money, it's their company. But we are saying to themselves, we carry a fiducial responsibility to recapitalize your own fleet. And he's relying on he says his short contract. They've been in business since 2004, Cathy. This is 2025. It's 21 years. It's 20 years if I'm to discount 2025.
Harry?
The same other two companies on the same basis, same amount, same subsidy, providing the service effectively.
Sure.
So
Harry,
I'm not sure
just hang on, Dr. Kekana.
Just hang on. It will be fair for us to have this engagement at this level here, knowing very well that they've engaged us. We told them that
yes, Dr. Kekana, I have
is,
heard you.
Yes.
Just hang on.
Thank you.
Harry, is that fair? That you have not been spending your money wisely?
No, it's not true. Let me explain to you that the two companies he's talking about, the one for the same reasons nearly went under in 2017. Sorry, when we speak to their people in 2017 for the same reasons we are talking about. At that time, Adamelang was still running but still struggling. The same other airport, we go Rustenburg, the same problems it had. Somewhere last year, they even had some of their buses burned down. These problems have been there. Now, at Adamelang, Cathy, I'm not saying somebody must babysit us. We are individuals. We do not have, we're competing with huge, and we told them, Cherry Creek in Rustenburg, it's owned by Greyhound. It's owned by people who are they've got money. When they run short, it is spent 3 months as a patel, 6 months about our patel. It's got deport. I don't have deport. Let's say, okay, which was done, this thing was done at the time, Premium Lewa, the late Dola Omar. Then the virus loses. Lady, let's say knowing who we were employees. Now, if you're going to compare me, the company and not pay me and tell me I must be able to compete with them, it's unfair. It's unfair. We are just people. We explain to them. What he says, no, okay, I'm not giving you salary. I'm not allowing increases. That is fair. I'm not raising your rate, knowingly so, but I expect you to do your job, and it tells me I'm irresponsible. I'm not irresponsible on that. I don't know why I'm in the office. I'm not. If I was irresponsible in 2004 up to 2011, up to at least 2015, we would not have been there. You yourself, when you said to us, this